Today's message from Reverend Christian Sorensen was recorded March 19th, 2017, and it's titled, Being Vulnerable, Strength or Weakness. Today's affirmation is, I find strength in trusting Spirit's direction for my life. And today we welcome the talent and performance of Jamie Lula, who, if you go to our website at joyouspodcast.com, you'll find links to his website and also to his Facebook page. And the way to do that is, in the top right, you can do a search for Jamie, Jami, and it'll come up with every episode where he's a performance on that particular Sunday. Come visit us at seasidecenter.org, and you can join us in Encinitas, California anytime. But on Sundays, where we always have great music, a spirited message, and a joyful, loving, vibrant community that awaits you.
Good morning, Seaside. What a beautiful day. So grateful to have everybody here. It is my honor, as it is every Sunday, to introduce our wonderful guest artists. And today we have a fantastic, very spiritual person who is just awesome. And I love his songs. And we've seen him here with Gary Lynn Floyd. It's the Floyd Lula duo. But today we get him all by himself, and we're so grateful. Please see him after the service. He does have CDs. And also you can keep in touch. I think on the website, Floyd Lula does have a concert coming up if you're so inspired to go check that out. So without further ado, please help me welcome Jamie Lula.
Good morning. How y'all doing? How y'all doing? Woohoo! I heard there was a party going on up in here. This is a song I wrote a while ago called Freedom. Part of it stemmed from Nelson Mandela talking about finding freedom in prison, right where he was, that there were no chains that could bind him. And I'm still working on that. I know none of you can relate, but especially Charlie. He's free. He'll get up and dance for you. $1 a dance. What?
Get the feeling that I've got to go. Love keeps me running to the me that God knows. I'm here to be, to uplift and unfold, emancipating the divine of my soul. Ain't nothing holding me down. I let go of my story, now I'm walking in the arms of freedom. No one ever held me down. Freedom. Take a look inside. Freedom. I said, change that mind, I change my mind about freedom. Take a look inside. Take a look inside. No separation, no precedent found. My revelation is the spirit unbound. The past has no power to paralyze me. I'm in the moment, I bless my destiny. Ain't nothing holding me down. I let go of my story, now I'm walking in the arms of freedom. No one ever held me down. Freedom. Take a look inside. Freedom. I said, change your mind, I change my mind about freedom. Come on, Bob Mathis, play it home. that I will feel your spirit. What can I say? That I will feel your love. What can I say? To heal and cure the hunger. What can I pray? To be your joy today. I get the feeling that I've got to grow. Love keeps me running to the me that God knows. I'm here to be, to uplift and unfold, emancipating the divine of my soul. Ain't nothing holding me down. Let go of my story, now I'm walking in the arms of freedom. No one ever held me down. Freedom. Take a look inside. Freedom. So change that back, not change my mind about freedom. Oh, take a look at that. Freedom. No one ever held you down before. Freedom. Take a look inside. Freedom. Change that back, not change my mind about freedom. Take a look inside. Take a look inside.
That is Mr. Jamie Lula. Woo! Freedom, man. That's big time Ernest Holmes. First page of the Science Mind textbook, Ernest Holmes uses the word freedom 6 times. So that's right on for this morning. Thank you. All right. Hey, this morning's message is being vulnerable, strength or weakness. And a lot of times vulnerability creates the concept that I'm weak, you know. And I want you to recognize that this topic is being used in centers for spiritual living centers across the country and across the globe today. So I didn't come up with this one. I got to talk into that. And but what I realize is when I'm willing to be vulnerable to the divine download, it's so much better. But I've got to be willing to let go to that and trust that Spirit's going to show up, that allows the message to be strong, as opposed to if I have it totally controlled exactly what I'm going to say, how I'm going to say in my inflections, which isn't really me, but it just kind of happens. And so what I've come to recognize, and it's a wonderful line from the Course in Miracles, is that if you truly realized who walked alongside of you on the path that you have chosen, fear would be impossible. Wow, yeah, sit with that one. If you truly realize who walked beside you on the path that you have chosen, fear would be impossible. See, that's the Spirit. That's why I can stand up here and say, okay, Spirit, you and I. Actually, it's you, but, come on. In your life, if you can say, okay, Spirit, yeah, you and I, it's really you. But come on now and give space for Spirit to show up. There's a lot of power that is there. If you really realize who is walking beside you and you are vulnerable to that spiritual download, that divine download, what could happen could be amazing. Imagine if you truly realize who is walking beside you right now in your life, you could go for anything and know that you could accomplish that. You get that? That's good. So what aren't you doing because of fear that you can't accomplish it? Yeah. Think about that one throughout this morning's message. I want you to be able to recognize, what? For some reason, I haven't stepped into that because I'm seeing, why it's not possible. What I want us to do, if you want to find strength in your vulnerability, is to recognize that I'm vulnerable enough to be able to catch a larger vision than my small-mindedness, and with Spirit, all things are possible. There was a book done, it was several years ago, about self-made multimillionaire young folks. young millionaires. And so the author, he interviewed 18 young multimillionaires and how they created it, and there was just interesting input in their stories. But one of the things that seemed to be common that went through them all, that the author pointed out, was that all these individuals, when they were stepping out and they were putting like all the assets of their business at risk to go for that which was next for their business, they never saw that task as impossible. They never actually saw it as a risk. They saw it as already done in the way to it, when everybody else looking upon it go, whoa, they just did that. That's a big risk. But see, that vision is so focused that they were willing to step out there. There was a study I shared at the first service of fighter pilots from World War II. And as I shared the story, there was a spouse or a wife of a fighter pilot, and said she remembered the study that was done. And it showed that these fighter pilots, the ones who flew during World War II in the dogfights, the ones that played it safe, they lost their lives first. They were gone. It was only the fighter pilots that were willing to take the risk and go outside of the norm and safety were the ones that were able to survive and come back and go up there again. And so what I want us to recognize is only when you're willing to be vulnerable enough to step beyond that safety zone, that Spirit can begin to show up in your life, because there's space for it. You got that? If you're like trying to keep it all contained, you may think it's strong, but it's really a place of weakness, because there isn't any place for Spirit to show up in a new kind of way. And so taking that risk, or being a risk taker, is not being irresponsible. Like, to be able to take that risk, it's stretching, it's courageous, but courageous is not irresponsible. Courageous is not foolish. Foolish is irresponsible. It is a willingness to say, there's something here that is moving inside of me, and it is strong, and it is powerful, and I'm going to go for it. And I'm going to believe, and I'm going to know that it is so. There's a fun story, or so it's been told, of a Aboriginal tribe that when they dance for rain, it always rains. And there was this urban city that was in the midst of a drought, so they brought in this Aboriginal tribe to dance for the rain, and they danced, and it rained. And so the head of that city asked the chief of the rain dancers, it's amazing. How is it every time you guys dance, it rains? He said, that's simple. We just dance until it rains. Are you willing to do the dance? Are you willing to do what it takes? You've caught this vision, and you feel a little vulnerable because I'm stepping outside of where I've been before. But you know what? Spirit is about to show up in our life that is powerful. I've got a faith here that's going to show up. And as I said, freedom was really important to Ernest, but so is faith. And Marv, I sent you this at like 3:30 this morning. Did you get it for us? Thank you. So in The Science of Mind, Ernest's book, he wrote, pure faith is a spiritual conviction. It's the acquiescence of the mind and the embodiment of the idea, the acceptance of a concept. If we believe that the Spirit that's incarnated in us can demonstrate, shall we be disturbed at what appears to contradict this? We shall often need to know that the truth which we announce is superior to the condition that we are to change. In other words, if we're speaking from the standpoint of Spirit, then there can be no opposition to it. Are you able to look at something that is opposed to that which is stirring in your soul and hold on to a faith and conviction that is so that nothing can take that conviction away? Because there's Spirit and there is really nothing else. Are you able to have that faith and be strong? You're vulnerable because it hasn't shown up yet, but there's a strength that comes with standing in that place and knowing and believing and trusting in that divine presence that is about to show itself. And it's going to show up beyond where you have been with your thinking or your awareness if you're creating the space for that. It's said, I of my own self can't do anything. See, that's the false self. That's the I that can't do it. The I that says, hey, I can do this, I can make this happen, I can push this through, I got it all, that's the little I, that's the false I, that's not the grand I, the true I, the I that I am. That false self of I thinks they can do it all, and they forget to be vulnerable for the divine download to show up to take it to another place. I of my own self can't do anything. It's that Spirit within. You got that? It's that essence. It is that life force that is within you. It is that intelligence that guides the universe. It can take care of you. But are you able to be in that place to hear that? Are you able to be receptive? Because only as you let go of that small I. You know, I think it's Matthew 10, verse 39, it says, the one that loses their life shall find it. And the one that finds their life shall lose it. And when they lose it in my name's sake, and when they lose it in the name of God, when you're willing to let go of that small self, the one who finds their life shall lose it, and the one who loses their life in my name's sake, in the name of God, in the divine presence, shall find it. See, you shall find something greater, and when you find it, you let it go. You got that? And you let it go, and then it shows up even grander and greater. And this is fabulous, but I don't hold on to this either. I'm willing to let it go and let my life unfold in a way that is right. Anita Majani, she talks about how she believes that within her is this divine guidance, a divine guidance system that she also believes is in all people. But what happens for her is that there's so much information out there in the world that is coming quickly, that's being bombarded into her mind, that her mind sometimes gets frazzled and she can't hear the divine guidance or that guidance system that's inside of her because there's this information, there's this headlines, there are these elections, there are these concepts, there's this Facebook, there is all these facts, and it's just bombarding her mind, and says sometimes she just has to say, stop. And what she does is she takes a fast from information, because her mind is frazzled and she can't hear that inner voice or that inner guidance anymore. And so she takes a fast from information, or at least that's what she calls it. It's like fasting when you stop eating food for 24 or 48 hours. You don't eat anything else for a while. She says that's what she does with information. And for a day or two or longer, if she can, goes without any information, and it quiets down inside, and she begins to hear once again. Begins to hear. Anis Nin, essayist, born to Cuban parents in France, but lived most of the time in the U.S., did memoirs, Harry and June. She said, we don't see life as it is. We see it as we are. You got that? We don't see life as it is. We see life as we are. And you take the time to connect with that presence within that can guide you and direct you. Do you? Now, you don't have to answer me, but I trust inside you go, yeah, or maybe I need to do a little bit more. You know? But the Sufi mystics, they talk about the lover and the beloved are one. When you choose to start looking at the beloved, you begin to merge with it, because that's what you are. That becomes your experience. That becomes who you are. And when you are that place where divine love is your intention, when you're coming from divine love, inevitably your actions respond to that. Your actions begin to reflect the radiance of your presence reflects that. Your actions of justice and compassion begin to reflect that in your life. That's where I want to come from. If I want to come from the compassion, the caring, I want to be vulnerable enough to be able to hear and to understand, as opposed to my mind, this is how it should be done, and this is, you may be going through this, but fit it into this box. That's last week's message, boxes. But we're outside of that box. Yeah. I was born and raised up in Hollywood, North Hollywood. That's where I grew up. And in growing up, we had a few significant earthquakes. I mean, the kind that shook houses, snapped our sprinkler system, took water the size of tidal waves out of our pool, brought down the chimneys, made doors no longer be able to fit in the door jambs. It was like significant. And so what we learned, from growing up, when something like that happens, you turn off, the gas, you turn off the power to the house, you just make sure your house doesn't blow up or catch on fire or anything like that. You turn that off. Well, what happens sometimes in life, when we have that emotional earthquake, out of protection and well-being, we turn it all off, right? You turn off the power. Right now it's overload, too much. I don't want everything to explode. I turn it off, and coming into life sometimes at home, growing up as a kid, I've heard stories of abuse in the home and anger in the home, hostility, just nasty things. And of course they had to turn self off to be able to survive that, or in life. As you have stepped out, maybe things have happened. A relationship went south. Someone betrayed you. Something nasty took place. The accident changed your whole world and your projection. Something happened in life that was tough, and you needed to shut down for the moment so things didn't get worse. But what has happened sometimes in life is that we forget to turn it back on. And so you come out of the childhood, shut down. Or you come out of a relationship, shut down. Or you come out of a business practice, shut down. And you haven't turned the power back on because something's might happen, could happen. And you start going through life without the light and without the brightness. What we've got to do is turn it back on, or it will continue to spiral downward. I've got a son, as all of you know, Trevor. And he has this irrational fear, at least I think it's irrational, of babies and dogs. I mean, I don't get it. It's a paranoid. It's an anxiety. He got picked up somewhere in this world, or he came into this world with it. But if there was something grand enough like travel, he would move through his fear of babies, love transportation. He would fly, and it'd be great. But all of a sudden, the challenge of babies has become so strong for him that he has shut down to protect himself. As a little kid, he would just disappear. It'd be a body and no spirit in there. It's real scary. But now he's got a big body as big as mine, and he just won't move on airplanes anymore. And it's like, really? Come on. And so every year for the last decade, we go down to our place in Costa Rica, and we hop on the plane the day after he gets out of school. But he's not getting on it this year. And so now we don't get to go to Costa Rica because of this. He's chosen summer school over Costa Rica. It's like, what's going on here? And so we don't really have the ability to have a back and forth conversation to see what is going on. But if I'm working with somebody in my office, I've got like 3 questions asked. When did you have that emotional earthquake? When did you flip the switch off? Yeah. The next question I would ask is, what were you trying to protect yourself from? Now, this is like being vulnerable. You want to get stronger. You need to step into the energetic of what's going on. And the third one I ask is, where in your life or what in your life have you not been able to experience because of having shut down? As we begin to take a look at that, we begin to open up to greater possibilities. Because, when you're shut down, it's like you're just a little night light in the bathroom. And it's just a little light. And the truth of you is you have got enough light where you can light all of New York City. Your light can be seen from outer space. You're so bright. But if you are functioning and allowing the effects of this world to keep you shut down, and you think, well, I'm stronger because I'm standing in my weakness and I know what's going on and I'm protected, that's a challenge. It's a challenge if it's keeping you from your greater good. Sometimes the vulnerability is saying, you know what, okay, here I am. I'm going to step into this, and I don't know what's going to happen. But I trust. I'm going to have a faith that Ernest talks about. I'm going to have a faith that something great is going to unfold on the other side of this experience. But what happens is people are running around like this. It's so dark. I can't see anything. And they got their hands over their eyes saying, I just can't see. This world is dark. It's scary. I don't know where to step. Whoop. Step next. And there's something real about the darkness that we find ourselves in sometimes. The mystics have talked about the dark night of the soul. St. John, really made the dark night of the soul familiar and acceptable in our practices. When I talk about the dark night of the soul, I'm not talking about a bad day or two or a week of depression. I'm talking about that long, prolonged, painful darkness where you just can't seem to get out of it. So you're underwater and you see people and you can't really communicate and you can't hear them. You're like in this fog. And nothing seems to quite be working. And you've got to go through that. You got to be vulnerable enough to be present for that experience. You can't think yourself out of that place. In that place, it takes some forgiveness. And forgiveness is not like a mental kind of experience, because forgiveness doesn't necessarily make logical sense for the brain. What got you there is usually something strong or profound, and you've got to be able to step into that fire and allow it to burn. But I watch people tell people who are in it, just, say some good affirmations, or people who think these affirmative words will get them out of that, or this pseudo-spiritual cheeriness. It's all fine. You know that? It's all God. Hey, isn't that sweet? That doesn't do it. It will get burned to ashes by the reality of what's going on in your life. You have got to be vulnerable enough to stand in the fire and burn with it. As the alchemist will tell you, it is what changes the base crud into gold. You've got to be willing to stand in that challenge and speak it without a defensiveness. Hey, this is what happened and this is why I'm here. You've got to stand in that and speak it without a blame, to be vulnerable enough to say, this is why I'm hurting, this is what's going on. And recognize that vulnerability isn't to be shared with everybody. When I'm talking about the strength that comes from vulnerability, it's not about spluing, you're puking your stuff all over everybody. There are only a few individuals in your life that are privileged and honored enough to hear the truth and the depth of that pain. We have these empathy baths today, which is about sharing with trained, compassionate listeners, about being there without judgment, with just listening and hearing and supporting. As one goes through this process in life, it's tough, but you got to be willing to stand in it, to own it, not defend it, not put blame, but to live with forgiveness and be honest and allow the alchemy of the soul to have its way in a way that will eventually bring you above the surface of that water. Yeah. Anita Marjani, she writes in her book, What If This Was Heaven? She said, during my near-death experience, I was not only without a physical body, but I was also without my race, my culture, my gender, and my religion. I'd shed all those layers of values and beliefs that my physical self had accumulated over this lifetime. And I was surprised to find that all those pieces of my physical life identity had nothing to do with my infinite self. So if my infinite self didn't include those elements, then what was left after stripping away all those layers? It wasn't a reduced element of myself, but in fact, something far, far greater. I was pure essence, pure consciousness, pure love, pure God. Label it what you will, but there are no words could ever match the totality of what it is I felt. I experienced nothing but love and empathy and compassion for myself and for everyone who had ever come into my life, whether they had seemingly hurt me or helped me. I realized even those who had seemingly hurt me had somehow moved me to the next level of my life in a positive way, even if it didn't feel like it at the time. I could call it my life review, but that hardly begins to describe the ecstatic experience, because I felt no pain, I felt no anger, I felt no judgment toward myself, and no guilt and others. I just felt love, and I felt so safe. Imagine if we could have that experience while we're in this body. There's nothing that says you can't feel that kind of love while you're in this thing, in this bag of bones, this bag of skin. That kind of unconditional love. But you got to be willing to expand. You got to be vulnerable enough to step beyond what it is that you have known. Elizabeth Gilbert, Pray, Eat, Love. She said, as the world gets smaller, the mind gets smaller. As the mind gets smaller, the world gets smaller. As the world gets smaller, the mind gets smaller. You get it? Kind of goes in that kind of way. Sometimes you need to just be a little courageous, risk taker, and step beyond what it is you have known on how to behave in the appropriate protocol on how to do this thing called life. I mean, there was this little church in the outback in Alaska who had lost their minister, or they needed a new minister, so they filled out all the appropriate paperwork. They sent it to their national headquarters in New York. New York received it, but after a couple months, they hadn't received a new minister for their pulpit yet, and they had sent a couple other memos or messages, and they never heard anything back. So the head of the selection committee, what she did was she went ahead and wrote another letter to the national board and said, hey, forget the new minister. We found that sinning is so much more fun. Within a couple of weeks, they had a new minister. Sometimes you got to be willing to step outside of the protocol or the way it has been. You got to be vulnerable enough to take that risk. You got to be vulnerable enough to stand in that divine download that you're hearing, that is not getting caught up in the phased mind of all the information that is there. I mean, I love what Louise Hay said. Well, there's a lot of things she said that I like, but this is what I'm thinking of right now, is that I choose for the rest of my life to be the best of my life. That's pretty good. I choose that the rest of my life be the best of my life. That doesn't hurt anything, does it? Imagine if you chose to speak like that. That's the broadcast that you put out there. You are broadcasting your perspective into the law of cause and effect, and it reciprocates back. Ernest Holmes calls it the law of correspondence. Judge Thomas Trord calls it mental equivalence. What goes around comes around. It's done unto as you believe. But no matter what you call it, it's what you're broadcasting out there. So I figure, and this is my take on it, the best thing, not the best thing, but a good thing that we can do is figure out those things that you like and you do more of them. Figure out those things you don't like and you do less of them. It's amazing how your life will turn around in that moment. All of a sudden you begin to believe. And I think that what is important when we begin to cast our vision or our goals in our life, that they be so audaciously bold and big that when we do achieve them, we go, wow, it's like mind-blowing that it happened. And the way you do that is to begin to see those visions bigger than where you are, because that is the only way you're going to come to discover your capabilities if you are willing to embrace the unknown. You got that? The only way you can discover your capabilities and your capacities is if you're willing to embrace the unknown. That's being vulnerable because you haven't been there yet. You haven't been there. As you begin to have the image, as you begin to visualize and verbalize this new story, the more you begin to verbalize this new story, the more real it becomes. The more real it becomes, the more you believe it. And as soon as you begin to believe it, you have this corresponding effect that begins to show up in your world in a very fast and real kind of way. That's how it works. And so, what's going on in your life? It's a result of your past thoughts and beliefs. And what you're feeling right now, and what you're believing right now, and thinking right now, that's what's going to create your future. So it seems to me it's best to embrace that which feels better to you, those feelings that take you to a better place, a higher place, and a happier place, because I'll tell you what, the universe responds to that in your life, and it swiftly brings it into your experience. Or what Emerson used to say, the universe conspires to make it happen. How would you like to have the universe conspiring on your behalf? Yeah, me too. I see it all the time for Seaside. It's why we continue to grow and thrive and expand and just rock it. Because we are a family that cares and loves, and we're here. We're a thriving spiritual community that works for everyone. And we are doing that, and we're moving it forward to the best of our ability. My sense is if you're not happy, you're missing the point of being here. Right? If you're not happy, what are you doing? Why do you want to stay in misery? Because I'll tell you, right where you are, it's holy ground. Yeah. Right where you are is I stand on holy ground is what we said. Okay. The psalmist said, even if you make your bed in hell, God is there. Yea, though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I won't fear. Because God is there. Do you get, is there something going on in your life that is hell? Is there something going on in your life that is like death almost seems better? You've got to remember it's holy ground and that God is there. That you can forgive. That you can step into that mystical place. You can figure out when you turn things off. And you can turn them back on in your life. We're dealing with a law and a principle that responds. It always works. Yes? Okay. Doesn't mean it's always working in our life like we want. I mean, I know mathematics is perfect, it's to the point, it's exact, it's always true. But yet, if you ever take a look at the registry in my checkbook, when I go to reconcile, it doesn't always seem to work in there. It's like there's a spot in my life where that mathematical equations aren't working. Now, it might have something to do with me. But in our life, if it's not working, it may have something to do with me. And I've got to be vulnerable enough to say, okay, I'm going to stand in this. I'm not going to blame the last person who took my check. And I'm not going to blame the doctors for what they said. And I'm not going to blame the house for not lighting any brighter than a little night light. You know what? I'm going to be vulnerable enough to say, okay, God, I'm ready for this download here. Show me. Because I recognize that you're not going to make this work because it's already true. Remember the story of Jesus and that cripple? He didn't say to the one who was crippled, you know what? God's going to heal you. God's going to fix you. No, he said to the one that was crippled, pick up your bed and walk. That's it. It's not like, oh, I'm sorry, let's get the prognosis. He just blatantly said, pick up your bed and walk. And in our life, where we're having the pain, the challenge, the hell, the difficulty, I'm going to say, you know what? Pick up your bed and walk. Oh, yes. I mean, it may not feel compassionate and loving, but you know what? That's our judgment. It's the way we're seeing. And the best thing we can do is claim our power and accept our power and recognize that Spirit is expressing as you. Anita, she talks about when you sit and ask her questions at this fireside chat or whenever. It's like what she says is when she goes back to that state, it's not like she's thinking about when she was out of her body. It's an experience. She gets goosebumps. It's emotional. It's in that place. And what she recognizes is she enters into a place of unconditional love with absolute clarity where there is all one, what we've been reading about and talking about. And it's not like she has to earn this unconditional love. It's hers because she exists. Unconditional love is kind of superfluous because if it's not unconditional, then it's not love. That's something entirely different. If you do this, I will love you. Behave yourself, I will love you. No, there is just total forgiveness, unconditional love, and the divine embrace. But you got to be vulnerable enough to drop all your stuff, your identity, your person, your story, and all that, and recognize that's actually a strong place to be in your life. Because when you are available and that chatter of your mind is quieted and you become that clear transparency for the divine download, what is in store for you will blow your mind. God bless us as we do this together. I love you. Hey, let's keep it going as we bring Jamie Lula back to our stage.
Thank you, Dr. Christian. Give it up for Dr. Christian once again. This is a song that was written by Bob Dylan. I don't do very many covers in my life, but I heard the lyric to this and I just thought could be construed as a romantic song. But the way I interpret it is this is a song from God to us, from the inside out.
When the rain is blowing in your face and the whole world is on your case, I could offer you a warm embrace to make you feel my evening shatters and the stars appear. There is no one there to dry your tears. I could hold you for 1,000,000 years. you feel my love. I know you haven't made your mind up yet, but I would never do you wrong. I've known it from the moment that we met. No doubt in my mind where you belong. I'd go hungry, I'd go black and blue. Oh, there's nothing that I wouldn't do. Go to the ends of the earth for you, to make you feel my love. Storm is raging on the rolling sea, and high on the highway of regret, the winds of change are blowing wild and free, but you ain't seen nothing like me yet. Oh, I can make you happy, make your dreams come true. Oh, there's nothing that I wouldn't do. Go to the ends of the earth for you, to make you feel my love. Oh, to make you feel my love. To make you feel my love.
And that is Jamie Lula. Oh my goodness. Hello, this is Christian. And if you've been enjoying Joyous Podcasts, I encourage you to support us so we can continue to be here. Your gifts is what allows this to continue to be made available for free for everyone. It now goes to more than 55 countries around the world, and it's because you have taken advantage of the opportunity to go to Joyous Podcasts and make a financial contribution. And because of that, you have made a difference. Your gifts make it possible for us to continue sharing this freely. Share this with your friends and have them go to joyouspodcast.com. Joyous blessings to you.